guys, what's up? KillJoy Jake here, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Today we are going to pit the remake versus the original of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, technically Texas Chainsaw 3D isn't a conventional remake of the original. It's more of a Halloween 2018 sort of ordeal, and this was actually one of the first movies to do that. I always credit Halloween 2018 for being a sequel to an original movie that came out like 40 plus years ago. This film actually did it first in 2013. Halloween 2018 was just kind of the film that popularized the idea. But I'm going to be putting it in this list just because eventually one day I'm going to do a sequel versus original of Texas Chainsaw, and you know, since there's another Texas Chainsaw remake coming out soon, you're probably gonna get a couple more of these versus videos coming sometime in the near future. But I'd like to cover as many of these movies as I can on this series, so screw it. Now before I get into it, I'm gonna need you guys to like this video and subscribe for more horror content. Alright, now let's get into it. Get over here! Now before I get into the good, let's talk a little bit about these movies. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 1974 American slasher film directed by Tobe Hooper and written and co-produced by Hooper and Kim Henkel. The film follows a group of friends who fall victim to a family of cannibals while on their way to visit an old homestead. The film was marketed as being based on true events to attract a wider audience and to act as a subtle commentary on the era's political climate. Although the character of Leatherface and minor story details were inspired by the crimes of murderer Ed Gein, its plot is largely fictional. A huge misconception about this movie is that the whole thing is based off of Ed Gein's story. Not at all. Sure, all the stuff in the Sawyer house is based off of what they found at Ed Gein's house, but I guess the guy was like really mild-mannered. He didn't seem like a serial killer, probably why he got away with a lot of the murders and digging up dead bodies in graveyards. Look that up. It's some freaky stuff. This film is also notable for being one of the first horror movies to say that what is on screen is basically real. And that's what's so horrifying about this film. This film feels like a snuff film that you found in somebody's basement and then you're watching it. And that is what's so brilliant about it. We're gonna get into that review in a sec. I gotta talk about these other movies first. The 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake was directed by Marcus Nispel, written by Scott Koser, and notably stars Jessica Biel. Its plot follows a group of young adults traveling through rural Texas who encounter Leatherface and his murderous family. Not only is it the fifth installment in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, it is also a direct remake of the Tobe Hooper classic. This is a very rare remake that features a lot of the original cast and crew from the first movie. And considering the long gap between these two films, what is it, almost 30 years apart? The fact that they got everybody to get on board with this is pretty exciting stuff. For example, Hooper and writer Kim Henkel served as co-producers, Daniel Pearl returned as the cinematographer, and John, who has a hard last name to pronounce, reprised his voice narration for the opening scene. Texas Chainsaw 3D from 2013 was directed by John Lucenhop, with a screenplay by Adam Marcus. It is the 7th installment in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise and was presented in 3D. Unlike the previous film, this film serves as a direct sequel to the 1974 film. Of course, ignoring the events of the subsequent sequels. Say that 5 times fast. Subsequent sequels. Notably, the film stars Alexandra Daddario, Trey Songz, and Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's youngest son. The film also has appearances from Bill Moseley, Gunnar Hansen, and Marilyn Burns, who have all appeared in the series before. The story centers on Heather, played by Alexandra, who discovers that she was adopted after learning of an inheritance from a long-lost grandmother. She subsequently takes a road trip with her friends to collect the inheritance, unaware that it includes her cousin, Leatherface. Now hopefully you've seen all 3 of these films, because otherwise it's about to get weird. So now let's get into the good. Starting off with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974, one of my favorite things from this film is the iconic cinematography. There are a lot of hits from this movie, some including the Leatherface door slam, Leatherface's chainsaw dance, and of course, the butt shots. You probably know what I'm talking about. They recreate this scene in like literally all of these installments. Although most people view this as a straight up slasher, it's actually more of an art house film, similar to like an A24 horror. When people ask me, Jake, what is the first slasher movie? Personally, I would argue that it's either Black Christmas or Halloween from 1978. This film, though, is not a typical slasher, although it's close. They didn't quite have the formula down here, and also this film is more of like an art housey kind of film rather than a straight up slasher. There's really not that much gore. Like, a lot of people remember this being like a super gory and disturbing movie, but gore is not the thing that drives the disturbing aspect of this film. It's more of the character performances, and I don't know if you count this as gore or not, but you know, Leatherface is wearing a human face on his face on his face off. John Travolta, Nicolas Cage. The sound design is incredible. Surprisingly, this film has a lot of jump scares in it. And when they do happen, they have this like really creepy metal screeching sound going on. It's this horrible noise that just like pops up when Leatherface just pops up out of nowhere and then he hits some dude in the face with a hammer. It's great. I love it. I could watch it all day. I mean, I'd probably go a little crazy if I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre all day, but yeah. I like me some horror movies. What can I say? The dinner scene is one of the hardest things I've ever had to watch. You want to talk about disturbing? This scene isn't even that gross, so to say. I mean, it's pretty gross. There's a lamp made out of faces hanging above the dinner table, so it's pretty gross. But what drives the disturbing aspect of this scene is the performances. Our final girl, Sally, is sitting there terrified, and she's literally saying things like, I'll do whatever you want, just let me go. And she's even like offering herself there. First of all, that's horrible, depravity and all that, but then like they're not even interested in that. These people are sadistic, they just want to eat people. These people are just one-dimensional, cannibalistic freaks, and that is what makes this movie so scary. For TCM 2003, the cinematography is also pretty dope. It's probably because they got Daniel Pearl, who did the cinematography for the original film, to come back for this 2003 movie. That shot where the camera goes through the girl's hole in her head, that's pretty awesome. I can honestly say I've never seen that in another movie before. Big props to Daniel Pearl for this movie, and the original, of course. Sheriff Hoyt gives a fantastic performance, definitely a standout role here. Gotta hand it to Ronald Lee Ermey, guys. He kills it in this role as a sadistic. And a surprising plus here, great practical effects for 2003? I don't think there was another movie that came out in 2003 that had good practical effects. Everything was digital at this point, and you know what? Gotta hand it to this movie for keeping it practical. I can't say that for the rest of the Texas Chainsaw sequels. Moving on to TC3D, honestly, I kinda love the new concept for this movie. I don't know if I love the concept so much, I just kinda liked the idea of Leatherface being the good guy, which is a big twist, and if you're watching this video and you've never seen that movie, well, sorry. I also really like the cast of TC3D. I think it's pretty cool that the Texas Chainsaw Massacres bring back characters from the old films, or I guess I should say actors from the old films who play new characters, because basically that's the entire beginning of this movie. So that's cool that there's kind of like a little Texas Chainsaw family. I guess that's one way to put it. Horror movies bring people together to watch other people get cut up and killed. Now it's time we move into the bad. For Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974, it's a little slow at the beginning. Yeah, it's a little slow, but come on, this film's still a masterpiece. At the end of the movie, why don't they just take the semi-truck instead of climb out of it from the other side? And what happened to the semi-truck driver? What happened to that poor guy? He like literally just like ran off screen and then Sally gets away. I want to know. I have to know. That's an unanswered question that I still have. The one thing Texas Chainsaw 3D missed out on is they should have just based that whole movie on what happened to the semi-truck driver if they wanted to do a direct continuation. I don't know, guys. That's the movie I want to see personally. Moving on to TCM 2003, the recreations of old shots sucks. Listen, you pervs, Jessica Biel might have a nice butt, but that doesn't mean you should exploit it. I say that as I'm probably going to put Jessica Biel in the thumbnail of this video. This film is really mean-spirited and hopeless for the main characters. Well, that's no fun. I've never really found it fun when it seems like the antagonist always has the upper hand. I like movies that it's like, okay, well, I'm getting ahead now. Oh yeah, well, I'm not getting ahead now. That's the most simple way that I can put it, but it's just like, it's gotta be this back and forth thing. The antagonists have the edge over the characters for 90% of this movie, and it's hopeless. I guess the positive ending makes up for it. Look, I'm not against bad endings or anything, but it's like, you gotta surprise me with it a little bit. And I guess this film does surprise me with a good ending, but you know, I mean, it's a remake of the original, so I saw that coming. This is the one thing the film does like really different from the original, and it's not great. Why is this whole movie just a chase scene? Seriously, rewatch this movie. I'm not kidding, I think 50% of this movie is just a chase scene. Jessica Biel must have been exhausted after filming this. It was just a whole lot of running. Moving on to TC3D. This film has a really dumb plot. Sure, it does something different, but it just gets real messy. Leatherface at a carnival full of people is a huge missed opportunity. I'm always saying that one of my favorite shots in a horror movie is when you have a big slasher and he walks into a group full of people and just kills all of them. You were so close. You were so close, Texas Chainsaw 3D. You had Leatherface in a whole carnival full of people, swinging his chainsaw around, and he runs away like a little baby. Sure, there was a cool Saw reference, but I don't care. I want to see Leatherface chopping up like 40 people. And this was like my only opportunity in all of these films to see that. You done me dirty, Texas Chainsaw 3D. You done me dirty. So if Heather's character was born in 1974, she's supposed to be 40-something, right? You would think that, but she's played by an actress in her mid-20s at the time. So, what? Your script is really messed up, man. I mean, one more revision and you would have been fine. Or make it take place in the 90s. How hard is that? Ryan's character cheats on Heather in the film, and that literally never comes back and was completely pointless to the plot. Alfred Hitchcock probably said one time that if you see a bomb at the beginning of the movie, it's gonna go off by the third act. Actually, maybe he didn't say that, I don't know. But one of the biggest film rules just in general is if you introduce something at the beginning or the middle, whatever, it's gotta come back at some point in the movie. Or else it was just like a pointless scene. You only have 90 minutes to do so much, so why even set this up for no reason? Ryan literally just dies in a car crash in the next scene. What would have been a lot cooler is if Heather's character, when she finally finds out that Leatherface is her cousin, pits the dude after Ryan and then Leatherface goes and chops this guy up. That would have been a dope third act. But instead we got whatever the hell was going on in the third act of this movie. This film has a lot of great moments, but just misses the mark in so many different areas. Especially there. So the Ugly Award, just barely I'm gonna give it to TC3D. Being in 3 dimensions just does not help this movie fix its problems. This movie just feels so all over the place and tried to do a whole bunch of different things. I like the concept of inheriting a house and then like, yo, Leatherface lives in the basement. Also, Leatherface saving Heather at the end of the movie was really cool. He was kind of the good guy, kinda, I don't know. That was interesting to me. The rest of this movie, not so much. So then it comes down to the 2003 movie and the 1974 original classic. Which one is it going to be? Okay, come on. We all know it's gonna be the 1974 movie. That of course wins. Look, the 2003 movie was a pretty decent remake, but it was also the first remake from Platinum Dunes, which if you know anything about Platinum Dunes, they went on to make a whole bunch of other crappy remakes. Discluding this one, I would say. And let me rephrase that. Not crappy, just subpar, man. Sure, the 2003 movie has its moments, but overall, compared to the original, it's just like, yeah. So do you agree with these results, or do you want to chainsaw my legs off? Tell me about it in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching my remake versus the original of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at KillJoyJake1 and on Instagram at KillJoy_Jake. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.